Councillor Collins, next comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kia ora, Matua Paul, and good to see you this morning. So I just wanted to get a few things clarified in my mind, so forgive me if my questions are, sound a little bit naive. Matua, can you just reconfirm, for your strategic approach, you have already undertaken an open public engagement process for the Maunga Authority?
That's correct. We had wide range of submissions, in-person hearings, in consideration, and changes were made to those documents as a result of those processes.
Yeah. So I don't want to stretch it because I know that we've mentioned the word being collaborative today, and I don't want to create unnecessary angst if and then some might already exist outside. But with your permission, Mr. Mayor, can I ask the chair of the authority, does it feel like this is a possible erosion of the independence and statutory function of the authority to now have the consideration to go to public consultation on on the plan that we are about to or may not be about to adopt?
I think there's two parts to that fair question. The first is the legislation is clear that we have to follow a process of engagement, and that's what we've done year in, year out. Also, the council has to undertake its process as well, and that's in parallel and also requires that joint agreement, as Phil Wilson has spoken to. So that was always part of the legal framework and landscape for us. And in terms of the fair comment about cart before the horse, there's a merits-based process that we're all about to go to in terms of receiving feedback and considering those in an open mind and in a fair and rational basis. Quite where this goes, we'll see. All I would emphasise, and this is the second part, is that, and as I said before, it's very important for council to take its advice at that part of the process following the public feedback as to exactly what its mandate is in terms of the decision. And for what it's worth, from my point of view, its mandate is not to effectively try and make decisions on operational matters for the authority. Its purview is the matters that it's entrusted with its own legislation. Those involve fiscal matters, and we've been through a legal process with the LTP. We are staying within the funding envelope, so that's been addressed. And then there's the operational matters in terms of are the various requirements for the legislative process being fulfilled. And it's important, and I say this with respect, of course, that we each respect and maintain our respective processes and roles that we have. And that's been the great success that we've seen to date, and I'm sure that we'll continue to see it in the future.
Just one final question, Mr. Mayor. Probably a bit nitpicky of me, but I'm just wondering, with the wording of Part B, and I just finished texting Councillor Filipino. I was going to ask him a question, but that might be pushing it a bit too much. There's a part of it, my eyes aren't the best, engagement events most likely to be attended by members of the public who are interested in or affected by the draft operational plan. I just wonder if there's a level of redundancy to that portion of the recommendation because we're wanting it to go to public consultation, or do we want semi-levels of specificity as to who will be in attendance? I'm not sure who that question is for.
Maybe I can address it first of all. I'm not happy with the current form of words that are being used there. I think what we're really asking in the first part of the recommendation B is to be advised of the process that the Te Puna Authority will be following, so we know where to direct people that ask questions that are appropriate for the TPA to answer, TMA to answer, not ourselves. And the second part really is just a discussion I've had with Paul. Understand the logistic limitations when you've got a small staff, but if there are going to be meetings that we know are going to be attended by members of the public in much higher numbers than usual, we don't want to be answering on behalf of the Tupuna Maunga Authority. It would be preferable for it to answer on behalf of itself, and And I'm not, we've got 34 events, and I'm not in any way thinking that it's reasonable to ask the Tupuna Authority to attend all of those, but there may be one or two that are particularly relevant that would be good to have somebody of authority from the TMA there to answer directly, so we're not purporting to speak on their behalf, which we have no right to. Okay, so I've asked the Chief Executive to draft something along those lines. That might be, I think, a better resolution to move. I'll get that on the screen shortly. Yeah.
Put my hand up for, because it's already been changed without asking the seconder. And
Yeah. No, I'm putting something up that will need to have the mover and the seconder concur with as per standing orders. Yeah.
It wasn't just before. It was changed from what I said.
That's the normal procedure, or alternatively, if the mover and the seconder didn't want to move or second it, it could be moved as an amendment. But it just seems to me, Councillor, that as we've got it worded there, this resolution was drafted before there'd been a clear explanation that there will be a full separate consultation process by the Tupuna Authority. Okay, and can I just invite the councillor to take her call? She's next in line.
My uncomfortable with this is that everybody pays their rates to go towards Tupuna Authority. So if you're just restricting it to the people that might be affected, everyone's affected, because it's about the plan, but it's also about the rate. So for me, this is, and we talk about question and answer sessions, for most time, have your say as you go along, the information is there and people have their say. There's not usually a backward and forward debate at have your says. It's about hearing people. And we know that because a lot of the local boards put them into their meetings and they're basically, here, tell us what you think. So I'm I'm very uncomfortable with when you say request, and then I think you put the Maunga Authority in a difficult position if they say they don't want to do this, because I actually think they don't have the resources, and any community could say, well, I'm interested, and then no, you didn't send anybody. I think you're putting them in an invidious position. They have a process already. The earlier one was have a couple of extra ones, fine, but this is how long is a piece of string. And I think the words do have to be changed. I don't see why having two extra was fine. I mean, to satisfy some people, but and it needs to be a request, because as it says, we cannot direct the Maunga Authority.
Yeah, I did, at the risk of repeating myself in my response to Councillor Collins, and I noticed the chair of the Tupuna Authority indicating support for the rewording of it to be more appropriate. And the more appropriate wording is, we've just had an explanation that there are planned events that they are running where people can be heard before a formal hearing and make submissions. So the recommendation, in my view, and that of the Chief Executive, is that we need to alter that wording. And secondly, just to acknowledge we're not demanding, we don't have the power to demand the Tupuna Authority to do anything, but to indicate there may be some key meetings where it is better to have the authority speak for itself than somebody else pretending to speak for it. I'll test the waters with that recommendation, starting with yourself and Councillor Filipaina, if you're happier with the rewording of it. But meanwhile, I'll just go back to questions, and we've actually really merged into comments as well. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora matua Paul, and my question is for Phil. Bearing in mind that the Tupuna Maunga Authority is a separate statutory entity from Auckland Council, are there any examples where we've requested a separate entity that's independent of us to turn up to our meetings?
Not that I recall.
One more question, please, Mr. Chair. Do you think that having these B and the other B is an example of a collaborative working relationship, or being collaborative in spirit?
with respect, I don't think that's a question I can answer.
No, I was just making a point. I won't be supporting either of those two. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right, Councillor Bartley. Sorry, Councillor Darby. Got my Lees mixed up.
For a way forward together here, I'm a former member of the Tupuna Maunga Authority, and just by way of background, I'm very aware of the desire of that governance group to be inclusive. Every decision was by consensus, and nothing proceeded without consensus. So I'm mindful of not usurping the authority, and I think there's risk in the words here, Mayor. And I'm just wondering if we can be as generous as to suggest the words request be struck out, and it be note the Tupuna Maunga or Tāmaki Makaurau Authority is undertaking a detailed consultation program, as we were just told, and just full stop after that. Let's be generous, and we've listened. We've heard that they are undertaking that. That's their promise, not just to us, but the people of Auckland. And let's just note that, put a full stop after acknowledging it, and leave it there, and not be at risk of usurping this recently created authority. I think it's culturally also, there is significance in this, and we need to be very careful and respectful. So my request is we just note what the chair of the authority has reminded us of and acknowledge and be grateful for that. Put a full stop after noting it.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that, Councillor. I think that's a good suggestion. I just want to check with the chair and the mover and the seconder that you're comfortable with that latest version. I'm certainly comfortable with it. Okay, well, so we'll put that one. We'll leave that one in place. And Councillor Filipaina, you're the last person I've got on my speaking list.
Yeah, Chair, I just got questions and reserve the right to speak. Question to the Chair of Tupuna Maunga Authority. Can you tell me when was the integrated management plan adopted?
2016.
2016?
2016.
Okay, and who was the deputy chair at that time? Oh, it was Councillor Fletcher. Oh, congratulations for adopting it. Other question, when you came through to the workshop, I know that the consultation was going to happen in regards to the Tupuna Maunga Authority having its separate consultation. That was relayed to the workshop. Can I confirm that?
Yes.
Okay. Chair, I do reserve my right to speak, and in regards to B, I also definitely agree with that, and not the second part. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. I just want, if it's possible, for an answer. I know my question was very lengthy, but there were two other parts to it that are unanswered for me. Our only opportunity in shaping the operational plan is today. It's my obligation to feel comfortable with it today before I sign off on it. The questions that I posed around fire risk, and I was sort of cut off before I got into the detail about the ecological restoration program, around whether or not mature trees play any useful part in nurturing a lot of those fantastic plantings that are going to come through of Indigenous plantings. I want to know whether or not that is something that might be, the chair could respond on. And in the spirit of collaboration, because we don't have the opportunity of meeting on a regular basis, and the chair quite correctly points out it would be ridiculous to try and cite every single tree in the Auckland region. But what we do try and do in the Auckland region is to classify those trees that have significance. And is there, in the spirit of collaboration, the opportunity for us working together to identify if there is any ecological value in having any mature tree, is there a possibility of a way that we might work together in identifying those trees, which will probably be very few in number, that are ones that are sensitive for historical reasons? So I just would like, if the chair wouldn't mind, to respond to that.
Is that appropriate, Your Worship?
Happy for you to respond.
On the, just make sure I've got my inside voice, on the fire risk, that, as Councillor Fletcher will recall from her time with the authority, a very important matter in terms of public safety, and especially for adjoining property owners for each of the maunga. And the management team are very aware of that and work very proactively on that. And if for no better reason than over the last 6 months, when we think about the fires that occurred at Maunga Fo from fireworks, despite all the controls and warnings in place, and the examples of arson that have occurred at, for example, Mangere. The team works very proactively every summer period with FENZ, Fire and Emergency New Zealand. They meet, the management team provide their plans in terms of the mown areas, the levels of grass height, the location of the fire breaks, etc. And touch wood, the experience to date has been that there has been no accidental fire on the maunga that has been the result of a lack of that those activities as approved by FENZ being undertaken. So, sorry for the double negative. The program's been very successful to date in terms of addressing that fire risk. And if members are minded to, if you go to the open workshop, sorry, the open meeting of the authority from Monday just gone, there is a paper expressly on that that gives the details of the fire safety program for this summer. There's also a paper there on the management of the risk of coronavirus, if you're so minded. On the matter of mature trees, I'm obviously not the expert. Some of the general comments I would make are, and again, this is as an acknowledgement of the huge respect that authority members have for the management team in terms of the level of care and expertise that they bring to bear. So each of the maunga restoration programs, both plantings and removals, are always based on external independent advice. And so matters such as nesting birds, protections, canopy cover required for emerging species are always a subject of expert advice. As I alluded to before, it's not the policy, despite some comments to the contrary in the public, that there's somehow a policy by the authority to remove every exotic tree on the maunga. And so to date, on the 4 previous examples, each of those maunga have remaining on them a number of exotic trees. And the councillor makes a good point, because on some of those maunga, and Maunga Rei is an example, there are scheduled trees that have been recognised through the council's process. There are also classified pest species through the council's pest management strategy. And so all those important public information tools and recognitions of the status of trees are relevant in the management team's approach. And so the management team does not seek to remove, and has not sought to remove, any scheduled tree or tree that has acknowledged in terms of a formal statutory document where those trees have that recognition. And I'm not saying that in the sense that we would never consider the protection of other trees that have significance. And an example of that occurred on Mangere Mountain when there was the public engagement process. But what I want to emphasise is that, as you would expect, especially from those members of the authority and mana whenua generally, we are very conscious of our intergenerational responsibility as kaitiaki. And so the mauri of those maunga are very, very dear to our heart. And so the vision that goes with that which was promoted in the IMP is very much around that care and restoration for the long-term health and benefit for these tupuna maunga.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive answer. Now, I detected with the further amendment of B that we're probably close to having general, if not full, consensus around the motion, but we've finished questions. If members would like to make comments, I'm not going to preclude that from happening. Councillor Sayers, was yours a question or a... It was a comment or a...
Question.
A question. Well, shall I take your question first, and then we'll return to Councillor Filipaina?
Thank you, Your Honour.
I've been promoted again.
Sorry, Your Worship. I've done that before.
My judicial
Done that
independence
before.
obviously shining
Doesn't mean
through.
I spend a lot of time in the courts.
I'm very glad to hear that, Councillor. I'd worry if you did.
So, look, I was just very pleased with that last answer about the scheduled trees, etc., being protected in the operational plan. My question to the Chair would be, would his organisation know about all these ceremonial and memorial plantings, or would he hope that that gets flushed out as part of the consultation process? That's question one, and I have a second question, if he's able to answer that. Thank you.
Yeah, so on the first one, or the one that you've asked so far, as is clear, if trees do have existing schedules and in the documents, then we become aware of them. And we're quite aware that there might be information that isn't in the public record, and reference has been made to some of that. So to use that as an example with regard to the details, some matters have been raised. To date, there's been no detailed information provided. That's not to say that it can't be provided or won't be provided. But again, we work on the best information that's available.